It's a defining moment in our nation's history. The U.S. Supreme Court is considering whether Donald Trump will be disqualified from running for office. NTD's Arlene Richards brings us the latest. The Federal Communications Commission cracks down on AI-generated robocalls ahead of this year's election season. A new rule will let call victims sue the offenders. A robbery victim is helped by a doorman while onlookers just stand and watch. We'll show you more of the shocking video. Some Washington lawmakers are shocked by President Biden's new rule that puts a pause on liquefied natural gas exports. Senators are investigating if the pause is just a political ploy. Find out what a top Democrat says. An economic shakeup not seen in 20 years. Mexico now claiming the title of America's top supplier of consumer goods, beating out China amid global efforts to de-risk. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Jack Bradley. Today, 9 justices on the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in the case about whether Donald Trump can be on the Colorado ballot. The case involves significant questions about how to interpret Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which bars insurrectionists from holding office. Joining us now is NTD's legal correspondent, Arlene Richards. Arlene, oral arguments were heard earlier today. Can you give us a sense about how the court may be leaning here?
Well, Jack, I think generally the court was interested in all of the questions that were raised in this case, and I think it was most interested in whether Trump in fact engaged in an insurrection. Now, they can only rely on the factual findings they received from the Colorado Supreme Court and the trial court, and those courts very clearly state that Trump did incite the event that occurred on January 6th, and they conclude that the event was an insurrection. So this largely comes from the January 6th committee's extensive report, which is what these challengers are relying upon to make the argument that an insurrection occurred. Now, it's important to note that Trump's attorneys haven't had the opportunity to present evidence to the contrary. The Colorado courts expedited the matter and limited their ability to gather such extensive evidence. Now, the other thing to watch for is whether the court will take issue with the lower court's factual findings that Trump did in fact engage in an insurrection. Now, I think this is going to be crucial for Trump's attorneys to clearly define this word, insurrection, and make distinct comparisons between what happened on January 6th and what happened during the Civil War. Now, the law in question, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, was created in the aftermath of the Civil War, and it was intended to prevent the Confederates from getting into office. So much of the focus could be on that history as well as what the actual law states.
Interesting. Now, given the seriousness of this decision here, what could the Supreme Court do?
Well, let's go through a few possible scenarios. So first, the court can rule that the Colorado court got it right and Trump should be disqualified. Trump is an officer of the United States. The Supreme Court could agree that Congress has the power to remove Trump from the ballot, or they could remand the decision to state court for further deliberation. Now, this decision could also impact the federal election case brought by special counsel Jack Smith. He hasn't said Trump is engaged in an insurrection, but he is charging Trump with conspiring to obstruct a governmental proceeding. This could also affect cases being brought by individuals involved in the January 6th event, depending on how the court ultimately defines insurrection. Now, later, Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama spoke about the Supreme Court during the oral arguments. Let's listen.
We're here for democracy. We're here to stand for the right to vote for the candidate of our choice. This should not be a partisan issue. This is an American issue. But our Democrat colleagues want to make it a partisan issue. This court must uphold the original public meaning of our Constitution. Stop today this attack on our democracy. Let the American people decide in November who their leaders will be.
Well, there's certainly a lot to unpack here for the court. Arlene, thank you for that report. President Trump was not in the courtroom, but he did make a comment after the arguments concluded.
In watching the Supreme Court today, I thought it's a very beautiful process. I hope that democracy in this country will continue because right now we have a very, very tough situation with all of the radical left ideas, with the weaponization of politics. They weaponize it like it's never been weaponized before. It's totally illegal, but they do it anyway. And it has to stop. Every one of the court cases that I'm involved in, every single one, civil, whether it's the attorney generals or the district attorneys. You look at Pharma in Georgia. They had many meetings with the White House and with the DOJ. They went there, 8-hour meetings. That was all staged. That was a phony hoax. And now you look at it, and it is a phony hoax. And hopefully that case will be dismissed in short order. It's a disgrace to this country. But they work together with the Justice Department and the White House, and not supposed to do that.
Voters in Nevada will get the opportunity to cast their ballots for Donald Trump in today's caucuses. The GOP frontrunner is on his way to the Silver State, where he is on the ballot after declining to run in Tuesday's primary. Tonight's Republican-driven caucus is a result of Nevada's change in its voting laws in 2021, which includes changing the state-run presidential primary. The state's GOP decided to hold its own caucus and barred anyone from appearing on the primary ballot from running in the caucus. All 26 of the GOP delegates will be awarded to the winner of the caucus. Nikki Haley ran in the primary, which included the names of other presidential contenders who left the race. She embarrassingly came in second place against none of these candidates. And now, breaking news to tell you about here today. The Federal Communications Commission is outlawing AI-generated robocalls. Victims of this sometimes annoying calls can now sue violators in court. Offenders of the new law can face fines of millions of dollars. Effective immediately, the order provides the FCC the ability to fine companies that use AI voices in their calls or block the service providers that carry them. In a news release from Commission Chair Jessica Rosenworcel, she says they're putting these fraudsters behind the robocalls on notice. Among the penalties, the new law allows for call recipients to file lawsuits. It also gives the state attorneys general another way to go after violators. The commission vote falls under the 1991 Consumer Protection Act that restricts junk calls that use artificial and pre-recorded voice messages. The FCC has used the consumer law to stop robocallers from interfering in elections. In one case, a pair of conservative hoaxers were hit with a $2 million fine for falsely warning people in predominantly black areas that voting by mail could heighten their risk of arrest, debt collection, and forced vaccination. Bipartisan efforts in Congress have sought to regulate AI in political campaigns. However, no action has been decided yet. 5 U.S. Marines aboard a helicopter that went down during stormy weather in the mountains outside San Diego are confirmed dead. Authorities say the heavy-lift helicopter vanished late Tuesday night while returning to the Marine Corps Air Station Miramar in San Diego after training at Creech Air Force Base just northwest of Las Vegas. The names of the Marines were not immediately released. Efforts to recover the remains of the 5 have begun, and an investigation into the crash is underway. But rough weather and rugged terrain made the task quite difficult. The Super Stallion helicopter was designed to carry up to 55 troops, or about 16 tons of cargo, both inside and slung outside the cabin. And the Senate just advanced a major foreign aid package today. The bill provides aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The vote means the Senate will begin consideration of the $95 billion package. It was a procedural motion, getting 67 to 32 votes. The bill will now need additional floor votes to advance in the House. This comes as just a day after the Senate rejected a $118 billion aid package that included foreign funding as well as funding for the southern border. Senate Republicans claimed it didn't do enough to combat the surge in illegal immigration. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer then agendized this stripped-down package that leaves out border security. Here's NTD's Daniel Monahan with more on the vote.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer wrote on X that Republicans first insisted the only way to pass this national security supplemental was with border. Now they are saying the only way it can proceed is without it. Today I will give them both options. The move to take up a foreign aid package without border provisions comes after Senate Republicans blocked a foreign aid package that included a border deal. provisions that set a threshold of 5,000 illegal entries a day before shutting crossings down angered conservatives. Congressman Dan Crenshaw says the process of the bipartisan border negotiation was flawed from the get-go on the part of Republicans.
You put one person in there, you make it completely secret. They didn't do a communications plan with everybody surrounding them. They didn't tell anybody what was in it. Immigration law is extremely complicated.
The foreign aid package includes billions of dollars to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia and security assistance for Israel, as well as humanitarian assistance for civilians in Gaza, the West Bank, and Ukraine. Senator Ben Cardin says aid to Ukraine is absolutely necessary, and that if Russia wins in Ukraine, it doesn't stop there.
Goes on to other countries in Europe, and it risks United States military personnel getting involved if they attack a NATO country.
The White House publicly expressed support for the security package without border provisions ahead of the vote. It's been an eventful week for Republicans, which saw some key GOP priorities fail to take hold, including the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and the defeat of a standalone Israel aid package. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Surveillance video captures a broad daylight robbery in a high-end New York City neighborhood. The victim is saved from further violence thanks to a doorman, while onlookers watch and do nothing to help. We want to warn you, though, this video may be disturbing. As you can see in this shocking video here, the woman is slammed against the wall by the robbers as the doorman comes out to assist. They continue to go through her purse, grabbing her cell phone and then running off, laughing as they flee. The video shows the victim chasing after the alleged thieves. She motions to a group of onlookers who just stood and watched and without offering to help. In the video from the NYPD, you can clearly see the faces of the suspects who run past another person attempting to grab one of the robbers. Police are searching for the pair. Jobs for illegal immigrants. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul is seeking to employ illegal immigrants to work in the state workforce, claiming that she has 10,000 unfilled jobs available to employ these individuals. Hochul's new initiative aims to integrate illegal immigrants into the state's workforce, targeting sectors like engineering, food services, and administrative support. With an acute focus on filling 10,000 state job vacancies, this plan is designed to offer illegal immigrants a pathway to employment once they obtain legal work status, a process that currently takes about 6 months to years. Hochul and New York City Mayor Eric Adams have called on the federal administration to issue faster work permits to illegal immigrants. Critics argue the policy may overlook local graduates and residents in dire need of these entry-level positions. Questions also arise about the practicality of verifying asylum seekers' qualifications and language proficiency for these roles. Investigating the Biden administration's pause on liquefied natural gas exports. Senators from both sides of the aisle today said the pause is a political ploy.
These types of decisions should be firmly based on facts, not politics. Unfortunately, the administration hasn't actually done this new market assessment yet, as I understand, or presented us any facts that justify this pause at all.
Even the liberal Washington Post called it, Biden's LNG pause is just political theater. You go through it and it says it's an election year sop to climate activists. Because that's what it is, Mr. Chairman, a transparent, very transparent election year payoff to appease radical environmentalists who want to end exports of American natural gas.
Today's hearing comes as 22 Republican state attorneys general warned the president that the LNG export ban is unlawful. The AGs sent a letter to the Biden administration listing multiple federal laws they say the White House is violating. They're calling on the administration to change direction right away. Top Senate leaders say that stopping the export of LNG could hurt the country's safety and economy and empower Iran and Russia. Senator Bernie Sanders is accusing big pharma CEOs of greed. During a Senate hearing today, the Vermont Independent points out that they'll sell drugs at far higher prices in the United States than in countries that are other than here. Now, Sanders says that Bristol Myers Squibb charges Americans over $7,000 for the blood clot drug Eliquis. In Canada, it charges $900. In France, $650. Johnson & Johnson charges Americans $79,000 for the arthritis medicine. And in Canada, it's $20,000. In France, $12,000. Now, the chief executives of Merck, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Johnson & Johnson respond to these accusations.
Will you commit to lowering the price of Keytruda in the United States to the price of Japan?
Well, Senator, I think first I acknowledge the prices in the United States are higher than they are in many of the countries you said, and not for all drugs, but for many drugs, and that's the reality we face. But I think it's also important to point out that you get access in the United States faster and more than anywhere in the world. We have 39 indications for Keytruda across 17 tumor types in the United States. If you look across Europe, it's in the 20s. If you look across Japan, it's in that number or a little bit less.
In Canada, medicines are generally made less available, and it takes oftentimes considerably longer for those medicines to be available. I would love the opportunity to bring down the price of Eliquis in the U.S. Our net prices, what we are compensated, have actually over the last 5 years declined. At that same time, the list prices have increased. Why is that? Because of the complexity of this system.
Sanders says the American government doesn't regulate pharmaceutical companies. He says the pharmaceutical companies instead regulate the American government by spending billions on lobbying. Now, the CEOs say that different countries have different systems. That's the United States system is very complicated. They also say that a wide variety of factors causes some drugs in the U.S. to be far more expensive. When we return, a global influence campaign pushing Chinese regime content. Over 100 websites disguised as local Chinese news outlets. Are we being traced back to a public relations firm that's owned by the Chinese Communist Party? And Iceland is under a state of emergency as a volcano erupts again, threatening the iconic Blue Lagoon and leaving thousands without hot water. More on how severe the situation is right now after the break.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
I started having lumbar pain, and the pain was terrific. Called the number. She was asking me very thorough questions, and it was like a done deal.
You have a pain on the back, and the pain on the back goes towards your hip, and then goes to the side of the leg, side of the calf, and the foot. And the foot is numb.
And he pointed, he says, if we don't correct this now, you will be in pain the rest of your life.
Carol was wheeled across the parking lot to the on-campus imaging center for updated MRIs.
Immediately after that, left that building, got back over here. He was in there and had the results of that on the screen.
We're gonna go clean this, and this.
And other streaming platforms.
My graduation was something I will never forget. People like you and me sometimes may have doubts in ourselves, but I feel that everything's possible.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back. Over 100 websites disguised as local news outlets have been traced back to a public relations firm of the Chinese Communist Party. A University of Toronto-based digital watchdog found a global influence campaign pushing Chinese regime content. Websites in 30 countries are mixing CCP propaganda with local news. The websites are set up to look like local media outlets. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg reports.
Digital watchdog Citizen Lab found pro-Chinese regime articles and propaganda being pushed on 123 websites in 30 countries under the cover of local news. Chinese Communist Party content is mixed in with local headlines, with content shifting between conspiracy theories about the U.S. and its allies to articles attacking CCP critics. The new report from the Toronto-based group released Wednesday dubs the campaign Paper Wall. Researchers say the websites are quickly multiplying, with an adaptiveness to local languages and content, and warn of a heightened risk of inadvertent amplification by local media and target audiences, despite having low reach so far. Citizen Lab traced the network to CCP public relations firm Haimai and says the influence campaign started in 2020. Most of the content Citizen Lab found was from a press release service called Times Newswire. Analysts at cybersecurity firm Mandiant found Times Newswire at the root of another CCP influence operation targeting U.S. audiences last year. Tech giant Meta last year reported China's influence operations were the most notable change in the threat landscape since 2020, and that operations were on the rise and expanding well beyond Asia. Citizen Lab dug deeper into the network after a series of the sites popped up in South Korea and Italy. South Korea's National Security Center exposed 18 of the sites in a report in November, also linking the operation to Haimai. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
In a trade shift not seen for 2 decades, the U.S. swapped China for Mexico as its top source of goods in 2023. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
The shakeup appears in new data from Wednesday, reflecting that Mexico now holds the status of America's top source of official imports. The major shift underscores both the Chinese market's failure to recover post-pandemic and the diplomatic tensions between Washington and Beijing. Here's the breakdown. Mexican exports to America held steady last year, totaling $475 billion. At the same time, Washington dropped its purchases from China by a whopping 20%, with total value falling to $427 billion. The data mirrors the U.S.-China trade level from about 10 years ago. To fill in that gap, American companies also turned to nations, including Europe, South Korea, India, Canada, and Vietnam, sourcing auto parts, raw materials, and other products from them as well as Mexico. U.S. imports also fell overall, with shoppers opting to buy fewer goods than in past years. That's amid a push to de-risk global supply chains.
And as Icelandic volcano erupts, threatening the renowned Blue Lagoon and disrupting hot water for thousands. Take a look at this fiery flow. A volcano in southwestern Iceland has erupted for the 3rd time since December, sending lava across roads and near the Blue Lagoon Spa, now closed for safety. The lava flows also hit thermal-based water pipes in the region, disrupting the hot water supply to over 20,000 people, prompting emergency measures. The Civil Protection Agency is on high alert as lava flows threaten critical infrastructure, including a geothermal power plant. Efforts to divert the flow and protect the area are underway, but restoring services could take days. A revolutionary new satellite launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida early Thursday morning.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition.
The NASA Pace lifted off at 1:33 a.m. Eastern aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The launch was initially set for Tuesday morning, but it was delayed twice due to bad weather conditions. NASA says Pace will gather data from Earth's oceans and atmosphere and provide an unprecedented look at our planet's microscopic marine life and the tiny atmospheric particles. Its 3-year mission will shed light on how aerosols and clouds, as well as phytoplankton in the ocean, serve as indicators for ocean health and global warming. And thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. Stay tuned for NTD Evening News with Tiffany Meyer at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. I'm Jack Bradley. I'll see you tomorrow.